Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Useless Aggression podcast with me, James.
And Le Champion, your new podcast world champion, whatever universal, whatever podcast champion, Henry.
That is unfortunately true. We will talk about that in more detail later. Firstly, how things been with you?
They've been good. So far, not got coronavirus, so definitely can't complain. um, and but everything's been cancelled. All the sports been cancelled. Presumably work might even be cancelled. But luckily for everyone listening, we live and work in different places, do James and I. So we can still do this podcast wherever we are.
Yeah, that's true. I'm fine at the minute. Hopefully, people out there listening are fine as well. Um, so yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy week, I guess.
I think that, I think it's because obviously it's a big impact in the wrestling world, as I'm sure everyone knows. SmackDown got moved. Um, what Raw obviously has been moved as well to Performance Center. There's now big talks as well, which we'll go into in a few minutes, about WrestleMania being postponed, and this could be. I mean, this could go on for months. This could get pretty. This could get quite a backlog for WWE and just sport in general. Really, it's pretty awful. We're gonna run out. But it might make me the longest running podcast champion of all time, though, which is definitely a title I will take.
You'll have an asterisk, that's for sure. But as you've kind of just said, you've kind of gone into one of the things that we will quickly discuss in this very quick edition of the Rogers Report. So, as was reported by Ryan Satin on WWE Backstage, the rumours are that WWE and former NFL tight end Rob Gronkowski are close to signing a deal. The details are not yet clear on what the deal would include, but we could expect to see Gronk in a WWE ring as soon as March.
I mean, his first feud has got to be Jinder Mahal, right? After that, when was it? Which WrestleMania was it where he appeared in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal? Was it 31? He just came out of the crowd,
yeah.
and then the very awkward bit where the security guard didn't realise that was supposed to happen, and she tries to stop him getting over the crowd barrier. He comes in. I think
She does.
He like shoulder tackles. It's got to be Jinder, his first feud, right? But I'm quite surprised in a way, because I mean the guy, I know obviously he likes WWE and stuff, but like equally he's quite notorious for injuries in the American football world. Obviously, granted, it is a pretty heavy contact sport, but we had a couple of concussions, a couple of torn ACLs and shoulder surgeries and stuff. He's quite damaged goods in a way. I mean, I love Gronkowski. I think he's a really funny guy. Obviously, both of us, she was listening, are quite big fans of American football as well, so we've known of him for years. But yeah, I think it's a weird one. I can just see him ending up being a part of like some tag team gimmick thing with like Mojo Rawley or something really painful like that.
Well, that's the negative for me in the situation, is anything that gets Mojo Rawley more coverage on TV is always bad. Yeah, I'm a fan of Gronk. I think I hate the New England Patriots for passion, but Gronkowski I still like, so that's quite a testament to him.
He, basically, he's just an absolute legend.
He was, as you said, he was very injury prone in the NFL, and I know this is a bit different, but even then, you got to wonder how longevity he will have. But yeah, it's an interesting development for sure. And then the other piece of news we've got today, the coronavirus has forced WWE to relocate SmackDown and most likely Raw into the Performance Center. At this point, it seems as though WrestleMania might also be up in the air, with officials from Tampa saying that yesterday they'll make a decision regarding the event next week. So I think we want to go into a bit more detail on this one, so let's elaborate here.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought of the reports I sort of read about it is Tampa were basically like to Vince and co. If you don't cancel or postpone WrestleMania, we will. I mean, it's only what 4 weeks away, 3 weeks away now. So assuming every other sport in the world has been cancelled or postponed for at least a month, if not more, it's it's surely going to be postponed, isn't it?
I mean, what option have they got really? They can't really do WrestleMania in an empty arena, can they?
Or in the performances, yeah, because that's like half of the spectacle of it, isn't it? Like the atmosphere. I mean, if you watch, I mean, WrestleMania is long, like painfully long sometimes. But you sometimes get by with things like the beach ball and all that crap with the crowds. But like, if there is no crowd and it's a 4 hour show and you're just watching a live stream from the performance center for like 4 hours, it would just be awful. Like, it would just be genuinely terrible.
Yeah, it's a strange situation for them to be in, and also just for the wrestling companies in general. Say hypothetically, everything gets called off. So not even just moving to the performance centers, but everything gets cancelled for say a month, could be two. You never know how long this will go on for. Now WWE are quite fortunate. Obviously, they've got quite a lot of money behind them. Um, they can probably still last. You feel like even on television they could show old pay-per-views or old episodes, and equally they might actually benefit from a bit of an off season, because people always say about their wrestlers don't get an off season. Well, this could be that for them. They could, as annoying as it would be to cancel WrestleMania if it gets cancelled, even if they can get just to Mania and then they have to stop, it's almost like a bit of a refresher. Everyone can come back with new stories, etc. But you got to look at a company like AEW. That they don't have that back catalogue to fall on, and they rely on their live shows quite a bit at the minute. They will make a massive loss, and I know they're backed by Tony Khan, who is obviously his family are billionaires. But you've got to wonder, this is actually really bad news for AEW.
Yeah, no, massively. And I mean, as you said as well, like I remember a couple of years ago now, and there were the really big blizzards in the north of America, and they still aired Raw just with some like promos and backstage segments. And then anyone that was in the area, I think like Dean Ambrose or someone was there, that just made him turn up and just do Dean Ambrose stuff for like half an hour. So they as you said, they'll survive. They've obviously got like network specials and stuff they can air instead. Meanwhile, yeah, as you say, with AEW, like they can't exactly now go back to New Japan sort of content and be like, here's all these amazing matches that like Kenny Omega and stuff had in Japan, because it's their own thing now. But I mean, they can't exactly wrestle behind closed doors. I mean, they could do in a sense, but it would. They haven't got a performance center sort of thing. They'd have to literally rent out arenas to just wrestle behind closed doors. It just seems ridiculous.
Well, especially for them, they've got Blood and Guts around the corner as well, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to that. And obviously, that hasn't been cancelled yet, but I can't see it going forward. That looked to be an amazing match. Obviously, the Elite versus the Inner Circle. The rules were announced. It's a submission or I quit rules, which was really cool. Um, but yeah, I think the problem for them as well is, from what I gather, from what I read online and whatnot, uh, TNA, or Impact Wrestling as it's now known, it doesn't have a lot of overheads. It doesn't spend a lot on its show production, and it doesn't rely as much on its TV money is all right, but it has got a back catalogue to fall back on, so it could still stay on TV. Same as Ring of Honor, but AEW, that TV deal's big for them, as is the money they make from live shows, and they will have none of that. Sure, I can't see how they can fill that slot still. Maybe they'll wrangle up, I don't know, old episodes of Being the Elite or something, but it's going to be a really tough time for them, and it's such a big shame as well, because I feel like they've really been on a massive upward curve, especially with Revolution as good as it was. It's such a shame to see them. Obviously, it's out of their control, and it's a shame. There's a lot of things that are a shame about the coronavirus. Like, this is by far not the biggest thing. That's like, it's when people look back in years' time, they're not going to be like, "Oh my god!" and remember what happened to the wrestling world. But it's still within the wrestling world. This is massive.
No, yeah, massively. Like, instead of WrestleMania, I mean, it's always been roughly the same time every year for the last 36 years. So, well, 35 technically. But yeah, so and if that even if that gets postponed, it changes that sort of sequence. I mean, I imagine they'll postpone and then just pick it up from WrestleMania, but then at the same time, it's not going to be the same having all the build up gone. It'll be like, oh, do you remember these guys, like, for example, with like Charlotte turning up on NXT, for example, and beating up Ripley. You can't exactly be like, hey guys, do you remember that time 4 months ago where Charlotte turned up and beat up Rhea Ripley? Now they're finally having a match. And yeah, it's going to be weird to see where it goes going forward. There might not be particularly too much to report on in that sense. I mean, obviously, as I said, WWE have got the performance center, but they can't. It'd be weird for them to do the entire road to WrestleMania in the performance center. For us to just watch this space, I guess.
It's not only about just the crowd as well, because at some point then it becomes about the crew and the talent. Like, at what point are they still risking traveling and performing? If they postpone, say they have to move WrestleMania back, which obviously is problematic for a whole bunch of reasons, but even then in the wrestling calendar, you're going to move WrestleMania back to, it could go back to June or July, but then you've got SummerSlam is in August, so you're going to have WrestleMania followed by SummerSlam straight away. Like, don't be wrong, I think WWE have too many pay-per-views anyway, but uh, this is really going to congest that schedule down, and it's just going to be a bit crazy. You've got to fit a Money in the Bank in there somewhere. You might have a situation where you have WrestleMania 1 month, SummerSlam the next, Survivor Series the next, and you've had three of your big four straight away. So obviously, none of us know yet what's going to happen. Everything is purely speculation. Uh, Even the big experts don't know what's going to happen. So it's a really interesting time just to kind of see. I mean, one big loss I've seen. Hangman Page has come out and said that while this is going on, he's no longer going to be drinking the fans' beer. So that's already, a huge change that's had to come in,
Devastation.
and it's certainly a strange time.
I mean, obviously, it's weird as obviously wrestling is a very, very much a contact thing. I mean, you see in like football now, they don't. Well, obviously, football has now been suspended for the time being, but before it did, the players didn't shake hands anymore. The risk of touching each other and stuff like that. Obviously, wrestling entirely revolves around grapples and holds. So, yeah, it's a pretty interesting. It's interesting to see where they go from it, especially because we had Elimination Chamber, obviously, which we'll go on to in a couple of minutes, where you saw quite a lot of good story building or presumably story building into the sort of road to WrestleMania. I mean, obviously the obvious one being Shayna Baszler winning, but then you had like Undertaker turning up and stuff as well. So they're really sort of trying to pick up the heat on. Yeah, I hate to use the phrase though, is a pick up heat on the road to WrestleMania, basically. Like
Yeah, I mean, the football thing about that was absolutely ridiculous.
it's so weird to watch as well. If you've ever watched when they just awkwardly line up and then just walk past each other, it's so weird. Like,
It's so strange. And then it's just whoever sat there and was like, "Oh, the coronavirus is a potential thing." That's right. We'll stop people from shaking hands before the game. That's going to solve everything. Don't worry about the 50,000 people all crammed into stands all next to each other, or the fact that even in the game of football, you're constantly grappling at corners and like tugging on each other and spitting on the ground near each other, and so that's all fine. But they've as long as people don't shake hands, this virus won't go anywhere. It was so stupid. It was always going to spread. Um, and if anything, I don't really think that I did anything at all to halt it. It just meant that 11 men didn't shake 11 men's hands. Like, great. What's the point? When they scored goals, they all bloody grappled and high fived each other anyway. So it, it was a stupid decision. But yeah, as you said, wrestling can't really avoid that. You've got to touch the other people. Um, and yeah, it's only going to take one person in WWE. If one competitor has it, or in AW or Impact or anywhere, it just from the sheer amount of contact they'd have had with another person, if there's another person with another person while they've been on tour, it's going to spread. So I guess just watch this space, and obviously we'll keep people as updated as we can, on our either on this or on our Twitter. But yeah, it's strange times.
but yeah, I mean, I guess obviously all we can really talk about now is what has been, which is the event which crowned the new podcast champion, yours truly, dethroned James because of Elimination Chamber, but more importantly because of James's own rule. Hasten to add. But what did you think of Elimination Chamber on the whole? I mean, obviously, I look back on it with the joyous memory of winning the title, but as an actual pay per view, what did you think of it really?
Uh, I was pleasantly surprised. I really wasn't looking forward to this going in. We both spoke about that. And we said we could only really be surprised, but I was. It was actually quite a solid pay per view. Um, I've got an issue with it that I'll talk about right at the end because it makes sense when you go through it all. But it was okay. It was actually quite a nice pay per view.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it started really well. The first two matches, especially, I thought, well, excluding the pre-show, the first two main card matches were superb. They were really, really good matches. The tag match, the Elimination Chamber, was good fun. Like, it wasn't necessarily technically a great match, but it was quite fun. Aleister Black and AJ Styles was good. And I think from the last three matches, I was a bit like meh with, but I mean, on the whole, I would say I would say it was all right. It was pretty good, I
Yeah,
guess.
I, I mean, going through the matches in more detail now. Then, so obviously, it started. We'll ignore the pre-show because, yeah, whatever. Even like I expected some good things from Brian and Gulak in the first match because obviously we know that Brian's been championing him behind the scenes, and he wouldn't then have a match with him on the pay per view to not help Gulak get over a bit, which is why both of us predicted that Gulak might actually win. Um, and this match was really good. They're both brilliant technical wrestlers. The mat game between the two of them was fantastic. Um, it was very interesting to see. Brian is always being the underdog. Well, not always, but for the majority of the time, has been the underdog in his career. So for him to have to play the other part, I think he did really well. Like he really sold the being shocked at how good had been. And yeah, the technical wrestling between the two of them was fantastic.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like in-ring storytelling, I thought was superb, and there's some pretty stiff shots in there as well. I mean, you saw the state of Brian's back and chest at the end of it. There was some pretty hard hits in there.
We say that, but Brian, every time he gets hit with
He does,
something, they're always like, "Oh, Brian, look at the welts on his back."
but
So,
true. But
but yeah, I
there
know
were
what you mean.
definitely some hard hits on him though. Like, I mean, they probably went for it, which I thought was brilliant. I mean, I will say I've not necessarily wouldn't call myself a Drew Gulak fan, but I was never particularly that bothered by Drew Gulak going into this match. I thought he was good, but I was like, cool. But no, I thought he was brilliant. I thought it was a really, really good match. I didn't realize it went on for like 15 minutes as well. Like it was quite a long match in that sense, but I was like, felt like pretty quick. I thought it was a really, really good one. Daniel Bryan winning did surprise me, but he won in a way that I think they could definitely get a few more matches out of it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's the start of a program rather than something else, which is what definitely can't be said for the next match. It was good. We're on about now Andrade versus Carrillo. Don't get me wrong, it's a good match. They're good wrestlers. Um, it, I've got a bit of a gripe with this being that this is like the 50 zillionth time I've seen uh, Alberto Del Rio, sorry, Andrade
So,
and Carrillo in a match, and I'm kind of bored right now of watching Andrade and Carrillo and Garza and Rey Mysterio all doing their. We get it that they're probably going to have a four-way match at Mania, but it seems like we've been having this
I was
match
gonna
every
say,
week on
yeah,
Raw for 50 years.
yeah. I mean, I think I was a bit. I mean, obviously, I kind of expect. We obviously predicted Andrade to win, but I mean, he's beaten Carrillo enough times now that there is just no real credibility to. It almost seems like there's no real credibility to him winning. I assume if they have a match at Mania, this isn't my prediction for it, but Carrillo or probably Carrillo actually be the one to win it. As I said, he's lost out so many times, but equally he's lost so many times now. You just don't almost believe it. He's almost an unbelievable like winner, if you know what I mean. It's not because I mean he got a bit unlucky in this one, but he has lost clean a few times as well. So you are just sort of thinking they've as you said they've done it to death to the point that you just don't care about it anymore. Like what's supposed to be this big baby face finally beating the cheating Andrade? You're just sort of like if he wins, I'll be like, yeah, he won, cool, great.
Yeah, I'm just not that invested in it. In that sense, all right. My gripe I'd have with Carrillo is he's very plain as a he's a face because he is against the heel, not because he is a face. It very much reminds me of I've been watching the Ruthless Aggression series on the network, which is quite good for anyone who wants to watch it. Apart from they have the most annoying voiceover guy ever, but it was talking about John Cena, and everyone talks about him in Ruthless Aggression times, and he goes on to say how he was a big failure because when he first started, he didn't have a gimmick. He was just a guy that turned up and went up against people, and that's what I see Carrillo as. I don't have any reason to cheer for him other than he occasionally, screams to the crowd and tries to get them to clap along, and that he is against a heel, and that makes it difficult for me to. He's technically gifted. There's no denying that, but I find it hard to root for him. And if you're going to put a title on him, uh, if you compare it to the Intercontinental title going to Sami Zayn, which fucking killed me in the predictions thing, but it
Yeah.
that's someone who we invested in, obviously as a heel, but there's a story there and it's ripe and it's strong. And whereas this doesn't have it, and that's the issue with the US title picture, is WE have genuinely gone, you four people are all Latino, let's stick you all together and let's just put a title involved in this. But there's nothing else to it.
Yeah, and like Selena Vega as well, they've just been there. Like you managed a guy who is Latino, managed this other guy who is Latino, um, and yeah, it just seems a bit. Yeah, I'm very like bored with with that whole sort of feud. I'm hoping they'll do the four-way match at Mania, which is rumored to happen, and that will be it. I'm hoping move on to something else. Um, and I feel like Andrade as well. Like I like him as a heel. I think he's really really good, but he's in that sort of awkward limbo phase now as well, where he's almost too good to be a mid card champion, but he's not quite big enough to be a world champion. He's in that awkward sort of like top
Yes.
quarter now, if you know what I mean. And yeah, no, I think it's time for him to start getting those pushes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see for sure what happens with him going forward. Moving on now to the tag chamber match. You obviously said before it was really fun. I have to. I loved this match. It, it had a bit of everything for me. You had the New Day and the Usos, who obviously started things off really well, and even at the end when they kind of faced each other, but then turned against Miz and Morrison. So you had the history. You had the old school. There's a lot of past matches there and a lot of story just from them all standing staring at each other. You had the Otis and Dolph storyline going on, and
Oh
Otis going
god,
crazy and just going through the chamber. And also, I was slagging them off beforehand, but Lucha House Party, oh my
they were
god, like
wicked.
the things they were doing, the jump off the top, it was insane. Grand Metalik was doing incredible. His Hurricanrana off the pod was absolutely insane. They were so entertaining, and yeah, I mean, I loved this match. It just had it had a bit of everything. It was really easy watching. You could just sit back and you didn't have to overanalyze anything. You didn't have to be like uh, judge anything. You just sat back and enjoyed what was in front of you.
Yeah, totally. Like, agreed. Again, so I've got Wikipedia up to remember the matches, but like the match was over half an hour long, but it definitely did not feel half an hour long in any way, shape, or form. Like again, you had the whole thing where like you genuinely hated Ziggler by the end of the match, and when he got eliminated, it was the best thing ever. And I mean that's surely I was saying earlier about some building matches now on the road to WrestleMania. That's got to be one somewhere now with Heavy Machinery and Ziggler and Rude. Has got to be a match in some capacity at WrestleMania, like pre-show or even just a part of a battle royal or something. But yeah, I thought
Main
Miz and
event.
Morrison as well. Main event goes to show with Lucha House Party in it as well. But yeah, you're right. Lucha House Party seem to be the only ones in there without a story. So then obviously like Miz and Morrison were the champions that sort of just piss everyone off. New Day and Usos have like actual years of rivalry with each other. And yeah, Lucha House Party seems to be the ones that were a bit of the outcasts that you weren't really invested in. But as you said, yeah, some of the spots they pulled off were amazing. Um, yeah, I liked the fact that New Day and Usos started it, and then also they kind of paired up at the end as well. I'm assuming at Mania that will be the match: New Day, Usos, and Miz and Morrison as like a three-way tag match. I'd hope that to be the case.
I'm really hoping it is that match because I think for the first time in a very long time, I'm talking since the very good days of the TLC era, if you announced well, this is assuming WrestleMania goes ahead, obviously, and there's a crowd, but this is probably the first time I think since you lost the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys that you could have at WrestleMania a three-team TLC match between the Usos, the New Day, and Miz and Morrison, and people would be very excited about it. They've
Yeah,
got
I'd
the
love it.
history, they've got the talent, and I think this could actually be a bit of a real renaissance for the tag team division of WE. That would be massive match, and all of them would work it really well. Um, I really hope that's the plan. I really hope there's a TLC involved because I miss there being ladder matches at Mania. So, um, yeah, interesting definitely to see where the tag division is going on SmackDown. Moving on, we differed on this match in the prediction.
We
You were
did.
all in about how confident you were about AJ Styles. I said that the Undertaker was going to turn up, and at this point, I thought I was retaining the title.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I don't know. I feel like the Undertaker didn't need to turn up. I mean, I get why he did, and obviously to set the match with Styles, but I don't think it needed to happen. Um, See, I read somewhere, like on one website now, where they wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of like Alistair Black tag match with the Undertaker because obviously the way they booked it. But I just think I think it would have been better if Styles won because then he gets the big win in the build up to Undertaker's match, and then Undertaker comes out and they beat up. I know they beat up Alistair Black after the match or something, and Undertaker comes out and saves him. So I just think I don't know. I feel like the problem is they're building Alistair Black up with this big unbeaten run, and I just can't see it going anywhere. It's the classic I think it's the classic WWE unbeaten run where it's just going to be randomly ended at like Extreme Rules or something.
He did lose at the Raw
Oh
before this event
yeah,
because
true.
AJ Styles beat him. But I know what you mean. I think that I've read there are rumors that he might get inserted into the match to take a bit of the workload off Taker. And it was interesting that at the end of this week's Raw, how obviously you had Seth Rollins and Alistair Black, and then when everyone else got involved and it turned into the whole thing that it is at the minute on the main event scene there, Alistair Black didn't compete. So they had then Viking Raiders and the Street Profits in an 8-man tag. But it was Alistair Black's match that got interfered in, and he just goes off. He just leaves. So that might be because they didn't want to insert him in their storyline because they've already kind of got him potentially going over to the Taker one. A team of Taker and Black would be very interesting because of their whole like dark characters. But to be honest, I want to see Taker Styles solo. I want to see what they can both do.
Styles is good enough to carry it as well and make it a good match.
Yeah, Styles makes
I
he
mean,
can
Styles
carry
make Reigns
anyone.
look good. Like, I mean, Reigns look good last whether they had their matches. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Like, it was actually a really good match. This though, I thought it was. I was actually quite interested to watch it. I mean, I knew the result of this one before I actually watched it, so I was ever so slightly behind watching the event. But having known the result, I still thought it was a really, really good match. I think Styles is a fantastic heel as well. That's where it's out there. I think him with the OC as well. He plays the heel role so well. And it's weird to think, so obviously he was a face for ages as well. And when you, I guess you see it in WWE, don't you, so much when someone's a heel and they're smashing it. You're like, why did you not do this sooner? 'Cause, I mean, obviously he started as a heel with the whole Cena thing, then it's been face for seemingly ever and just sort of existed. And now they've sort of redone him as a heel. He's amazing.
Yeah, I think I mean I still thought he was a strong face, but yeah, he's definitely a better heel. His promo against the Undertaker was great. I I like how he's there've been a few things wandering about because on backstage he made a comment where he doesn't know which Undertaker he's talking to. Is it Mark Galloway or is it the
Yeah, that was good.
the American Badass with Limp Bizkit as his best friends? And when he said that, people were wondering, oh, well, I wonder if this means maybe we'll have an American Badass version of Taker. I would be shocked if we did because he's already turned up twice as the Dead Man. So it'd be really weird if now he turned up as on his motorbike with Limp Bizkit playing him in. But
I love
it's
it. I personally, I love that. But
I mean I'd love that as well. But it's nice to see a feud with the Undertaker that's not just all about I'm gonna take your soul. They're actually addressing you're Undertaker. You also used to be the American Badass. You're also married to Michelle McCool. Like they're addressing the human behind the character, which is quite nice to see. And as you said, like, it, well, we've both said AJ Styles is fantastic. He can carry anyone. Not that Taker needs carrying because he's not good, but just because of his age. I want to see them go it alone. Alistair Black being inserted in the match isn't bad because Alistair Black is very good. But do you really want to see Gallows and Anderson involved? Like, who the hell wants to watch
no,
them?
that's it. Yeah, no. I mean, the one thing I did actually really like about this match is this is a really weird compliment to give a no disqualification match, but it actually used that stipulation quite well. Because quite often you'll be like, oh, it's a street fight or it's a no disqualification match, and then there's like a couple of kendo stick hits, and then that's it. And you're just like, okay, cool, that was a great no DQ match, or like a table which you can put people through anyway. But then I think for this one, they actually went all out and actually properly used the stipulation, which I thought was really, really nice. They actually got a bit extreme in that sense, in a WWE sense anyway. They got a bit extreme, um, and yeah, I thought it was really good. I genuinely really enjoyed it as a match. This for me though, this is where this was like the sort of peak of the event, and it started going a bit downhill for me from here. Anyway, well, not downhill, but it just got a bit average for me from here.
The next match for me, probably the worst match on the card in terms of the combination of the wrestling in the match and the storytelling of the match. Not saying they're not none of them are bad wrestlers. It was an entertaining match, and the storytelling was there, but it just wasn't as good as the rest of the card. It was the Street Profits versus Murphy and Seth, we should say. But
Yeah, I mean, KO was always going to turn. It was always going to end the way it was. Like, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I think no disrespect to anyone involved in the match. Everyone did a really, really good job. I liked. I actually really like this Monday Night Messiah sort of Seth Rollins character. I mean, like Seth Rollins as a heel, like I think is brilliant. I like that you just had AOP just randomly walking around looking for Kevin Owens, and I like the fact you had like the habit. So like Murphy is constantly just going to the corner to be like to Seth Rollins, like, oh, what do I do? What do I do next? And stuff like that. I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, like, Street Profits, I really like Montez Ford. I think Montez Ford is brilliant. Angelo Dawkins, I'm not as bothered by, but like, yeah, I just think it was a very predictable match. It's one of those matches. Had it been on like a Raw, you would have been like, oh, this match was amazing. But then, like, because it's on a pay per view, you're there like, it's like an average pay per view match, a good TV match, if you know what I mean.
yeah, it was a weird one as well. It's a match with all those people involved in it, but everyone knew that ultimately Owens was going to come down and do something, and it's to further the Owens and Rollins feud. I'm happy for the Street Profits. I think they're really good. I actually put them in my weekly power rankings, which is here's my shameless plug of the episode, my new weekly thing going on our YouTube channel. So check it out. But yeah, it was all right, and that's all. I don't really want to spend a lot of time really talking about it. It was okay. It did its job, but the next match for me was catastrophic because this is where I lost the title.
See, it was catastrophic in the result sense. Like, I think I love Sami Zayn. Like, of the modern roster, he's one of my favorite people on it. Um, I like the sort of premise going into it that Braun Strowman could never get his hands on Sami Zayn, and like he's basically living in his head, and I went through the entire match as well. Basically, Braun Strowman never getting his hands on Sami Zayn and Sami Zayn winning the title. I just also think Braun Strowman only just won it, um, so it seems a bit weird to take it off him this quickly. I liked the story of the match in a way. Like I liked the whole like tactic where Sami Zayn would come in. It was just basically him being a really, really good heel. Would just come in and kind of like beat up Braun Strowman. Then when he starts coming back, he just tags someone else. I quite liked that. Um, but as an actual match itself, it was pretty average. It was only yeah, it wasn't a very long match either. It could have been a bit longer, I think. But yeah, I thought it seems that all signs are pointing towards Braun Strowman overcoming the odds and just beating all three of them. And the way it sort of ended, I was a bit like, "What?" When I sort of I obviously won the title as a result of it, so I was pretty happy. But equally, I was just like, "What has just happened?"
See, it's weird because had obviously beforehand. I mean, I locked in Strowman, and you thought Strowman was going to win as well, and I think everyone did. And it's if beforehand we were talking about how this would be such like if they make Strowman finally win a title and then lose it straight away, it's such a mistake, and why they're not using him properly. This would be catastrophic. Yeah, I actually kind of love this because of the way Zayn's done it, and Zayn is brilliant, as you've said. Um, it, when it happened, other than the fact that I'd lost the title, I was actually quite happy. It's just nice and clever. It's smart. It's intriguing, um, and it's box office really for me. It's got the story there, and the story's strong.
I like that Zayn was the one to get it though, for sure.
Oh, 100%. If you'd have put it on Nakamura or Cesaro, then it would have been terrible.
But like the idea. But I mean, what I was kind of, I mean, it's obviously ridiculously wishful thinking. But what would have been quite cool is if, because obviously Vince loves trying to get everyone into a WrestleMania card as possible. I almost think I'd like it if the sort of Sami Zayn, Nakamura, Cesaro faction like implodes, and you end up with some kind of four-way match for the title at Mania. Because apparently the story I read at the moment was they were thinking of having like a cage match or something with Strowman and Zayn, so that way Zayn can't run away, and therefore Strowman will very quickly win the title back. But I feel like that's almost just a waste. It seems like a really stupid idea. Well, not a stupid idea, but it just seems like it's a big stipulation for what will be like 6 minutes of Braun Strowman just kicking the crap out of Sami Zayn, winning his title back, and it would be like a
I don't think that would be 6 minutes. I feel like we'd have like the other two would find a way to get into the cage, and then they'd probably try and tie Strowman down or something to help Sammy escape. But I know what you mean. It's a little bit of a waste of a stipulation. Um, but now moving on to the main event of the evening. I mean, we called it. I'm pretty sure everyone knew what was going to happen here. Baszler just absolutely dominated everyone. And online there was a big divide when this happened. I was watching it live, and half the people were loving it because of the storyline, and half the people hated it because of the entertainment factor. And don't get me wrong, I would have hated to have been there live watching this because you had to sit through so much of Baszler just sitting watching other people before they came out. But the thing is, it did its job. It built Baszler up to be the baddest, most dangerous woman on the roster, which is the perfect person you want to take on Becky Lynch. I think the issue they had here was the card was weak. Obviously, they did a good job of it, but the card was weak. That there was no other match that could have followed this. This did make sense being the main event. Yet, if you had one of the four, world championships on the line, you could have put that after this. But it just, and then at least you're finishing on a big high. But it just it makes sense, but it isn't entertaining. In the long run, it
yeah.
will be fine, but in the short run, it kind of sucks.
I think the only bit that really disappointed me in this match is I would have liked to have seen Baszler and Asuka go at it for like a good decent, maybe like 10 minutes or something. Just those two have like a proper. 'Cause I mean, I don't think that would make Baszler look any weaker if you took out everyone and then Asuka essentially just had a singles match. I don't think that would have made Baszler look any weaker if she beat her that way. But it just completely kind of yeah, I don't know. The booking of it was really weird as well. Like, I don't understand what was going on with Liv Morgan for like the entirety of the match. Like, they always obviously they always kind of oversell the chamber being this big like daunting thing when they go into it, going into the ring. But like, she just looked like really weirdly nervous, but like overly nervous for the entire match. until for some weird reason Shayna Baszler turned up, who she just watched like batter everyone. Then suddenly she came out like, "Yeah, I'm not nervous." And I was just a bit like, "What the hell?" It's just the really weirdest booking ever. And the fact they had the whole storyline they were bigging up with Liv Morgan, Ruby Riott, and Sarah Logan, and then that didn't even come into fruition. That just felt really weird. It was booked
Sarah Logan and
oddly.
Ruby Riott, I wouldn't have even put in this match. They're just there's nothing going on there with them. They've tried to make a little storyline, but they're not really. I don't rate them at all. Sarah Logan, especially when she was in there, was like, "Who the hell are you? Like, why are you here?" She did some of the stuff she did was okay. Liv Morgan, obviously, you had that. It looked horrific that, and it sounded so
Oh,
even
the
worse.
head
When she'd
hit.
swung
Yeah,
across,
that's an awful.
I felt bad, and I don't usually feel bad for this person, but Natalia got her absolute ass kicked in this match. She got somewhat. Was it like Sarah Logan like kicked her in the face by accident, and then she went down. She got up from that. Liv Morgan did a crossbody, but hit her in the knees with her face again. Hit her right in the face again. I was like, oh god, poor Natalia. And then Shayna Baszler comes out and starts ramming a door into her. I was just like, someone just eliminate her. She's literally had the crap kicked out of her. She needs to stop. Just eliminate her. And I've never felt bad for Natalia. So yeah, it was. I see your point with the Asuka going on to that, but from what I heard, Asuka really hurt her hand beforehand, and there was whole rumors she might not even be in the match. But yeah, it made sense. It just wasn't entertaining.
I think the order of it annoyed me a little bit as well. I think it would have been a more, as you pointed out, obviously, there's a lot of people just sitting around watching Shayna Baszler just walk back and forth, staring at various two people left in pods. You could have easily had her come out at 4 or 5. Sorry, not 4 or 5. Sorry, 5 or 6. Be the one of the last two, and then just eliminate everyone. Then, like I think having it because you probably had a good realistically, I mean, the match wasn't very long. You probably had a good like I don't know fifth of the match of just Baszler walking around the ring waiting for people, and you could have put her later in the match. You could have still had her and Asuka facing off. If she came out fifth instead of fourth, she could have eliminated everyone in like really quick time, which she did anyway, and then just have her facing down Asuka for ages. And it would have been, I think, probably a better use of everyone else in them. I mean, everyone in the match was ultimately there just a job to Shayna, but it still would have been a better use of everyone in there. Like a lot of people weren't happy with it, as you said. Like I've got a couple of the reviews up here, and I think like so the company Heavy gave it only 1 out of 5, saying even though it was predictable, it started off with some pretty uninspiring action, and then once Shayna got in there, it didn't really get any more interesting. And then they said though, quite interestingly, as a final review of this quote, this completely shit the bed and has severely hampered Shayna and her hype heading into Mania against Becky Lynch. I wouldn't go that far, but it was a bit like, I mean, everyone knew she was going to win anyway.
It's a bit of an anticlimax. The thing I would probably compare this to is when Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar in like 87 seconds or whatnot, and we were all like, why the hell did they bother with that? But it leads to a better ending, and it led to that match at Mania, which it wasn't a 5-star classic, but it was a nice, fun match. And there was the story behind it, and that's what I think this is. It they needed to very quickly. Vince doesn't think people watch NXT, so he needed to show like, oh, I need Shayna Baszler to somehow become the baddest woman on the roster because Becky Lynch has been built up to be this absolute behemoth, and the best way to do that is to put her in an elimination chamber and absolutely dominate it. So that's what she's done. She came out of the Rumble and was really good, and now she's come out here and done really well. So she is now, if you've never watched NXT, you will now look at Shayna Baszler and go, yeah, she could take on Becky Lynch. And it's quite a scary thought because she might actually win. The weird thing about that match is if Baszler wins, I don't know who, well, other than obviously her and Becky having a long feud, but I can't think of another top woman on Raw, top who is a face who could take her on.
Unless you get unless this is the big long prelude to Ronda Rousey coming back, maybe. I mean, I'm not sure.
Could be. I mean, she was spotted in the Performance Center, which hilariously was leaked by Cain Velasquez himself. I've read some reports that Vince was absolutely seething that the picture of those two got out at the Performance Center, and but he couldn't react to it because it was Cain Velasquez who had done it himself, and he didn't know it was supposed to be a secret. So he was just there on Twitter taking a picture selfie of them both, like, "Oh hey, look, it's me and Ronda Rousey." And Vince supposedly was absolutely livid, like, "Who the hell's leaked that they were here?" And looking to try and fire someone. And alas, it was Cain Velasquez.
But like, I think the thing that's interesting that you were saying about obviously making it a credible opponent to Becky Lynch and stuff. I read a couple of people's sort of predictions online for WrestleMania, and quite a lot of people actually have Becky Lynch beating Baszler, which seems, and obviously time will tell, but it seems like a lot of people don't think that even this where they've built her up the way she has, she's going to win.
I think the part of that might be based on also the whole. If you look at the fact that Asuka was undefeated and for as long as she was and won the Rumble and took on Charlotte Flair, but then Charlotte won. And this could be similar to that. It could be Baszler comes in and she dominates in the Royal Rumble and she dominates the Elimination Chamber, but Becky's still going to win. And I don't know which way it's going to go yet. I've not really made my mind up, but it wouldn't surprise me either way. I'd probably actually have Becky as a slight favourite, but yeah, it's too early for me to decide on that one.
Yeah, we would say we'd find out in about 3 weeks, but that remains to be seen now, unfortunately, with the state of coronavirus. But yeah, I mean, obviously we can do that. I think that the good thing it did do Elimination Chamber is it did build towards a good 2 or 3, maybe even 4 matches at WrestleMania now. So it did its job, I think, ultimately in that sense. It did its job as a pay-per-view. Yeah, I just think, yeah, I was surprised in the first half, and the second half was kind of what I expected it to be. But yeah, on the whole, it was all right as a pay-per-view. If I was, I'd probably give it like a cozy like 3 stars.
Yeah, 3 stars is probably fine. But do obviously let us know. Get in touch with us on Twitter. We're at uselessagpod. With letting us know what you thought of it, or this is now on YouTube, so feel free to comment below. Um, and yeah, let us know what you thought of the event. And yeah, I guess that really sums up the Elimination Chamber review.
And your new champion will take it for walk into WrestleMania in possibly 6 months' time as a deserved, the rightful, the people's champion.
It's a disgusting time in the history of the podcast. I'm so sorry that we only just really returned and it's already turned into the dark days.
I'm just saying we got more likes and follows in the last few days. I'm just saying it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence.
Well, if you want to get in touch with us individually, I am at Citadel James.
And I'm at Henry Rogers 94.
And obviously, yeah, subscribe, follow, whatever to this podcast. We're now on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. It's on YouTube. I'm doing my weekly power ranking series on YouTube as well. So keep up with that and keep following the Useless Aggression podcast.